Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Footprints on the Moon, the Space and Rocket Center's 20th anniversary celebration of the Apollo 11 lunar landing. Please turn your attention for a moment to the laser beam aimed at the moon. As part of our event, we are making an attempt to bounce a laser beam off of one of the reflectors placed on the lunar surface by the Apollo astronauts. Our show, which takes place all around you throughout Rocket Park, will last approximately 20 minutes, followed by a fireworks display. For your safety, we ask that you remain in your positions until the conclusion of the show and the lights in the park are restored. We further ask that you refrain from using flash cameras. All media are required to use available light, as all outside light sources will destroy the integrity of the production. We hope you enjoy the show.
The moon, Earth's nearest neighbor. Since the dawn of man, he has watched it in awe and fascination. He has worshipped it, lived in fear of it, been inspired by it, and for centuries dreamed of journeying to its surface. 20 years ago, this week, during the summer of 1969, man realized this vision of countless dreamers before him and walked on the moon for the first time. The story of the first moonwalk begins 40 years ago when the United States Army decided to begin rocketry research in Huntsville, Alabama. It was 1950 when Wernher von Braun and his team of scientists moved to Huntsville and began the quest for space.
Thank you very much, General Tolstoy. This is one of the happiest and most significant days of my life. My former countrymen and myself, who became United States citizens today, are especially grateful to you, General, and the officers of your staff for bringing us over and helping us find a new haven in this country.
The Army's team at Huntsville was assigned the task of developing rockets for the defense of the nation. Their first creation was the Redstone, a surface-to-surface guided missile that was so dependable that it earned the nickname Old Reliable Redstone. Using the Redstone as a base, the scientists added a spinning upper stage to the rocket to create their first multi-stage booster, the Jupiter C. Although the Huntsville rockets were developed for defense, they were destined for space. On January 31st, 1958, the Army's Jupiter C rocket launched Explorer 1, the United States' first satellite into Earth orbit. America was in space. Marshall Space Flight Center was established in 1960, and on May 5th, 1961, atop Huntsville's Redstone rocket, Alan Shepard became the first American in space. From the Army's pioneering work in rocketry research and this early probe into space, evolved the National Aeronautics and Space Administration, NASA, a civilian agency charged with the scientific exploration of space.
I believe that this nation should commit itself to achieving the goal, before this decade is out, of landing a man on the moon and returning him safely to the Earth.
With barely 15 minutes of spaceflight behind them, Kennedy had committed NASA to a seemingly impossible task, the conquest of the moon. Project Apollo, as it was called, sought to loft a three-man spacecraft to the vicinity of the moon, land two men on that bare and battered surface, and then bring the astronauts safe home again. The men and women of the Huntsville rocket team began working to turn this dream into reality. It took hundreds of these dedicated people to create the rockets that would lead to the conquest of the moon.
We are fortunate to have some of these same men and women in our audience tonight. Please join us in celebration of their achievements by honoring them with our applause.
The first product of this massive effort was the Saturn I.
With the successful firing of the Saturn, a gigantic stride has been taken in the exploration of space.
The Saturn I was the first large rocket developed solely for space exploration. In 10 flights, all were successful, an unprecedented record in rocket development. The work that went into the Saturn I rockets was instrumental in developing the systems necessary to create a rocket capable of taking man to the moon. The Saturn V, the greatest achievement of its time, was conceived and developed in Huntsville, Alabama. The Saturn V was the biggest, most powerful rocket ever built. The spacecraft was more than 36 stories tall. It was built in 3 stages with 91 rocket engines and 8 million working parts. The Saturn V, the giant rocket that would make it possible to escape the Earth's gravitational pull and take man to the moon. July 16, 1969, Cape Kennedy. The command ship Columbia and the lunar module Eagle are perched atop the Saturn V rocket, a giant monolith in the Florida dawn. This massive spacecraft is nearly ready to tear free from the bonds of Earth and begin the greatest voyage man has ever made. Inside are the Apollo 11 astronauts.
Neil Armstrong, Commander Apollo 11. Edwin Buzz Aldrin, Lunar Module Pilot. Michael Collins, Command Module Pilot.
Hours later, the command ship extracts the lunar module from the 3rd stage of the launch vehicle. Thus linked, the 2 crafts cross the 250,000 miles of space between the Earth and the Moon. On July 19th, Exactly 3 days after the launch, Apollo 11 goes into lunar orbit. Neil Armstrong and Buzz Aldrin are in the lunar module. The Eagle separates from the command ship, where Michael Collins will continue to orbit the moon in preparation for their return. The Eagle prepares for the descent to the lunar surface.
Here, go for landing, over. Roger, understand, go for landing, 3,000 feet. You're looking great.
The Eagle fires its retro rockets as it nears the lunar surface. The craft is guided toward its landing site in the Sea of Tranquility and its place in history. The Eagle comes ever nearer to the goal. As the world waits for what seems like an eternity, this brief message is broadcast around the globe.
Listen, Tranquility Base here. The Eagle has landed. Roger, Tranquility. We copy you on the ground. You got a bunch of guys about to turn blue. We're breathing again. Thanks a lot.
As people the world over watch and listen with breathless anticipation, man comes ever nearer to the end of his quest. The Eagle is standing on the surface of the moon, and man is standing on the precipice of his dreams. Through the window of the Eagle, Armstrong and Aldrin see for the first time the magnificent solitude that has baffled and dazzled the ages since the dawn of man. 7 hours after landing, the moment has arrived. Neil Armstrong is about to become the first man to walk on the moon. The Eagle's hatch is open. Armstrong climbs out of the limb and begins the descent to the moon's surface.
At the foot of the ladder, the lamb footbeds are only depressed in the surface about 1 or 2 inches, although the surface appears to be very, very fine-grained as you get close to it. It's almost like a powder. Ground mass is very fine. I'm going to step off the lamb now. That's 1 small step for man, 1 giant leap for mankind. Oh, that looks beautiful from here, Neil. It has a stark beauty all its own. It's like much of the high desert of the United States. It's different, but it's very pretty out here.
As the world watches in awe, Buzz Aldrin begins his descent to the surface of the moon.
Okay, I'm on the top step. It's a very simple matter to hop down from one step to the next. You've got 3 more steps and then a long one. Okay, I'm going to leave that 1 foot up there and both hands down to about the 4th rung up. There you go. Okay, now I think I'll do the same. A little more. About another inch. There, you got it? That's a good step. Beautiful view. Isn't that something? Magnificent sight out here. Magnificent desolation. Powder is very, very fine powder, isn't it? Isn't it fine? Hey, Neil, didn't I say we might see some purple rocks? Find the purple rocks? Yep. Very small, sparkly fragments.
men from the planet Earth first set foot upon the moon. July 1969. GG. It came in peace for all mankind. That's one small step for man, one giant leap for mankind.
With that step, mankind was united for one brief moment on that hot July night in 1969. As people throughout the world walked outside and gazed up at the moon they'd seen 1,000 times before, they knew that it would never look the same. Instead of a mystery, its beauty would now stand for a stepping stone to the stars.
Ladies and gentlemen, may I present the members of the Apollo 11 crew, Neil Armstrong, Michael Collins, and Buzz Aldrin.
Thank you. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. Friends from Huntsville. 20 years ago tonight, we were preparing to launch toward Luna. All of us had flown rockets before, but the next morning, we were going to ride on no military hand-me-down or popcorn firecracker. We were going to ride on the Saturn V, a fire-spitting, thunder-clapping, go-to-the-moon machine. It was a great ride. And we would like to thank all of you who participated in that project and made it a reality. Thanks so much for one great ride. Now, Mike Collins.
Really nice to be here in Huntsville in the heart of Alabama. I almost said it's so nice to see so many of you, but I cannot see you from up here. But it's nice to know you're there, and I do know that many of you worked on this great series of rockets, the Saturn I, the 1B, and most especially the Saturn V moon rocket. And thank you for the job that you all did on those fantastic machines. But I like to think of the future really more than the past, and one of these days, and I hope it will be soon, this country will decide to go again far out into space, perhaps to Mars. And when it does, it will need you. It will need Huntsville, and I know you will do the same remarkable job in the future that you have in the past. Thank you. And now, Buzz Aldrin.
Back in the 1950s, when I was a fighter pilot, that was just another moon. 28 years ago, President Kennedy made that moon our goal. And for 8 years, so many people from so many lands, so many parts of this nation worked very hard toward that goal. 20 years ago, we had the good fortune to carry out that dream, and that moon is no longer a stranger, it's a friend. and thanks to the people here, you turned people power into rocket power. I believe that in the next 20 years, men will reach Mars. And en route, I'm sure we'll stop off at the moon, and we'll do all of this because of people like you who give us the power to move our spacecraft out in a great venture outward. Thank you so much. I can tell by the enthusiasm of people coming together like this that we will turn this program into a great pioneering effort again. Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, may I present Apollo 12 lunar module pilot and Skylab astronaut, Alan T.
Hello, fellow Earthlings. How does the moon look tonight? I can remember 20 years ago being at Mission Control Center. It was the night of the launch of Apollo 11, and I can remember going outside and looking at the moon. We couldn't see them. They were in their spaceship on the way, and just thinking how incredible it was. It just seemed impossible to me, and I knew that Pete Conrad and Dick Gordon and I were going to go after they went, but it still seemed impossible to me that 3 men could be on their way to land on the moon. I enjoyed so much the presentations tonight, especially the reenactment of Neil and Buzz on the moon. I remember watching it on television at Mission Control Center, also in Houston, and hearing their voices and watching them on television. And it wasn't very good television then. It was black and white, and it was real hazy. It was almost ghost-like. In fact, I felt if we turned off the voice, it would almost be a supernatural movie as they moved around on the moon. I can remember Buzz particularly running, started to stop. In fact, it seemed almost like an animation to me. In fact, sometimes when people say, well, you guys really didn't go to the moon. You just did this in a stage somewhere in Arizona. I think, looking at them do it the first night, 20 years ago, a couple days from now, that it did look like animation to me. It seemed incredible. They got out on the moon, they collected some dirt, and then they did the thing that I think was the most important thing of all, is they put the American flag up on the moon. I think we have to be aware as Americans that somehow when we do incredible things, that once we've done them, then we tend to forget about them and think they're commonplace and concentrate on some negative things that we do as a country. But that isn't true about Apollo. 6 flags are on the moon. All 6 are Americans. No other country can do this. It took the best efforts of people here in Huntsville, at Houston, at Cape Kennedy, California, Denver, everywhere, 300,000 dedicated Americans made an impossible dream come true. And in fact, that's what I think about when I think about the moon trip. When I look at the moon, like tonight when I was looking at it, I usually look for the part of the moon where we landed. If you look at the moon now, the place that Neil Armstrong, Buzz Aldrin walked on the moon, first you look for the moon, then you find the center of it. Then you look over about 20 or 30% of the way to the right edge, and that's where they were. When I look at the moon, I look at that spot, I think about them going there. I look about 20 degrees to the left of center. That's where Pete Conrad and I walked. And I think about it, and I look at the moon, and I say, you know, now it seems more impossible to get there than it did back 20 years ago. And I think the reason it does is because 20 years ago, everybody I worked with was working to get ready to go, and they believed, and we all believed that we were going to make it. We had to do it by the end of the decade, and we were going to do it by the end of the decade. This country can do anything it makes its mind up to do. It's just that simple. Well, I guess today is the 16th. So we got 3 more days or 4 more days until the 20th. So I know I'm going to do it. The night of the 20th, I'm going outside. I hope it's a clear night like it is here. And I'm going to look at the moon again, 20 years later. And if I look hard enough, if you look hard enough, you can see the footprints up there. American footprints. And the interesting thing about it is they put them there 20 years ago. But scientists think they will still be there 20 million years from now. 20 million years from now, many, many children and grandchildren will have come to this wonderful country, but they'll still have that place on the moon where mankind and womankind went out and made their first steps on another world. We are so lucky to have been part of it. Those of you in the audience that worked on the Saturn V that took them to the moon did something that can never, ever be done in history again. And that is sent the first voyagers out to another world. Certainly as the centuries unfold, voyagers will go back to the moon, go to Mars, establish colonies on Mars, go out and live on some of the moons of Mars and the moons of Jupiter. And just like Star Trek, they'll go out to other star systems. And they'll always look back. They'll look back to these years. They'll remember 1969 for one reason only. 200 years from now, 1969 will be the time that human beings left the earth and went out, which is our destiny. We'll never stay here forever. We'll move out just as we moved from Africa to Europe to this hemisphere. All of us were so proud to be part of that first movement. I'm glad to be here with you this evening. I think this is a wonderful celebration for something that is only good, can only be viewed good in human history. One of the things that we as Americans can feel great pride in forever and ever and ever. Thank you very much.
May I present the first American in space and Apollo 14 Commander Alan Shepard.
you. Thank you very much. Welcome to Space Camp and the 20th anniversary of the first landing on the moon. I want to tell you that I am just delighted to be here with you this evening. I understand that night before last you had 3 chaps named Armstrong, Aldrin, and Collins here. And last night you had a young chap named Alan Bean here. Obviously they saved the best until last. I would like to point out this evening something very especially significant to me, and that has to do with the Redstone, which you saw earlier, and the Saturn V. Perhaps not all of you realize that I'm the only astronaut who was lucky enough to fly both the Redstone and the Saturn V. And of course, both were designed, developed, built, tested by many of you folks here in the audience tonight. And I want to thank you again personally for 2 great rides. Thank you. As you saw this evening, it was very exciting, I think, in 1961, when I made that first Redstone trip. Just 3 weeks later, Kennedy said we're going to go to the moon, and we're going to do it before the end of the decade. 8 years later, approximately, men landed on the moon. Incredible. It's an incredible story of technology, of dedication, of people. And don't forget, it was all made in the good old USA. And don't forget that that great technology which put all of us on the surface of the moon is still here in the United States, and it's still the best space technology in the entire world. Now, because I am the oldest of the 12 astronauts who walked on the moon, I suppose I can maybe take a little bit of liberty and a little bit of license to talk briefly about the one thing which struck me the most. Being on the surface of the moon, 250,000 miles away from our home, our planet here, and looking back at it, seeing the beauty of Earth, seeing the beauty of the blue planet, I was actually overwhelmed. The tears actually came to my eyes. Totally surprising to me, totally without any kind of forewarning. To me, it was an expression of something which obviously was exciting to our generation, exciting for many generations. As a matter of fact, probably the moon landings were the most exciting thing that's happened certainly in this century. We can all be proud to be part of it, and we can all be proud to celebrate it here this evening and this week with our colleagues who went to the moon and came back, and with our folks here who put the hardware together to take us there. You know, we can look ahead. We can think of these exciting years that we had on the lunar surface. We can think of the great Apollo program. We can look ahead. Many of you here in Space Camp, many of you youngsters will be the space explorers of tomorrow. Where shall we go in the years ahead? Well, I'm not going to pontificate tonight to that degree to talk about whether it should be lunar colonization, whether it should be space colonization, whether it should be a permanently orbiting space station, whether it should be a man landing on Mars. but perhaps all of these in due time. I think the important thing to remember tonight is that here we are recognizing this tremendous space technology developed here in our country today, and knowing that that space technology must continue. Those of you here who believe that must express that belief. We must continue this technology because it has helped make us one of the foremost, if not the leading nation in the entire world. That kind of technology is going to help us in our everyday lives in the years ahead, and it's something that we must continue. Whether we go to Mars tomorrow, whether we go to Mars 25 years from now, is not important. The important thing is that we believe that we have to continue to express these things. We have to continue space technology. It's a legacy that us old guys leave to you young guys. Take it, wear it well, and do well. I'm just delighted to be here with you this evening to celebrate, to become a part of this marvelous 20th anniversary. Thank you, and good night.
Ladies and gentlemen, we hope you have enjoyed tonight's show. When the house lights are restored, please exit either through the museum or Shuttle Park. Thank you for joining us in tonight's celebration.